The 2024 US presidential elections are being held under conditions of unprecedented global and domestic crisis. And what choice are workers and young people offered? The fascist Trump and genocide Joe Biden, the two candidates of the capitalist ruling elite who agree on all essentials. The last elections culminated in the attempted coup of January 6, 2021, during which the sitting president, Trump, attempted to overthrow the Constitution and stop the transfer of power. 3.5 years later, the underlying contradictions and crises of American capitalism have only intensified. The central priority of Biden and the Democratic Party for the past 3 years has been the escalation of global war. Biden's response to Trump's coup was to insist on the need for a strong Republican Party. And to achieve bipartisan support for his war policy, Biden has accommodated himself to the fascistic demands of the Republicans, including a massive assault on immigrants and refugees. The bipartisan support for imperialist war was on display last month, when both parties joined hands to pass a $95 billion supplemental military spending bill. Signing the bill, Biden declared, "On the critical issues, we've come together." Indeed, they have come together to deepen the US-NATO war against Russia and Ukraine, provoked by the Biden administration, which has continuously escalated the conflict over the past 2 years. The administration has repeatedly stated that it will not be deterred, even by the threat of nuclear war, in its mad drive to defeat Russia and carry out regime change. The Democrats and Republicans have also come together in supporting, financing, and politically justifying Israel's genocide in Gaza, which has killed more than 34,000 innocent people. While Netanyahu and his regime is carrying out the genocide, it could not drop a single bomb, destroy a single building, or murder a single child without the active support of American imperialism. The genocide in Gaza and the war against Russia are, in fact, two component parts of a single global war, which is metastasizing across the Middle East and Eurasia as the US targets Iran and China. The corollary to world war is an assault on democratic rights throughout the world, including within the United States. Here, the two parties have come together in the savage repression of protests against the genocide in Gaza and college campuses throughout the country. At the same time, the US-backed right-wing Ukrainian regime has arrested our comrade, Bogdan Sirotjuk, a socialist and anti-war activist, on fraudulent charges of supporting Russia. In reality, Comrade Bogdan is an implacable opponent of the Putin regime and all capitalist governments. The SEP demands the immediate release of Comrade Bogdan. We are taking the fight for his freedom into the factories and the workplaces, and among youth on college campuses across the United States. We call on all workers and young people opposed to the genocide in Gaza to fight for the development of a movement against imperialist war as a whole. And the fight against imperialism is a fight against capitalism. The war abroad is a war at home. Under both Biden and Trump, workers have gotten poorer while the ruling elites have gotten richer. Since the beginning of the pandemic 4 years ago, the combined wealth of American billionaires has nearly doubled, from $2.9 trillion to over $5.5 trillion. Both the Democrats and Republicans have enforced a pandemic policy of forever COVID, that is, of unending mass infection, death, and debilitation from an entirely preventable illness. More than 1.4 million Americans have died from COVID due to the prioritization of profits over human lives. While Biden came to office pledging to follow the science, more Americans have in fact died under his watch than under Trump. Every mitigation measure has been scrapped, and over 20 million Americans are now suffering from long COVID, with no funding to provide them with care or develop effective treatments. Mass death and disease, genocide and nuclear war. have all been normalized by a social system that is rotting on its feet. There is no way forward within the existing political system. In the 2024 presidential elections, it is meaningless to talk about a lesser evil in the conflict between Biden and Trump, the Democrats and Republicans. It is time to settle accounts with a whole brand of politics, pseudo-left politics, which has promoted the lie that the Democratic Party can be reformed. Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and the rest are political frauds. Despite shedding crocodile tears for Gaza, they have supported funding for Israel, as well as the war against Russia, while insisting that workers and young people must back the Biden administration. As for the trade union apparatus, it is ever more closely integrated with the state and its war policy, epitomized by UAW President Shawn Fain, the supposed reformer, whose stand-up strike last year succeeded in doing as little as possible to impact the profits of the corporations. Fain has joined hands with Biden in promoting the arsenal of democracy, in reality, the arsenal of genocide and war. The central question upon which everything depends is the independent intervention of the working class on the basis of its own program and its own interests. This is why the Socialist Equality Party in our election campaign is fighting to build a socialist leadership in the working class, the vast majority of the population, which is completely disenfranchised. Socialism means equality. It means a society run by the workers, for the workers, in the interests of the workers. It means a society in which exploitation is ended and classes are abolished. Socialism cannot be achieved by piecemeal reforms, by tinkering around the edges. It requires a frontal assault on the wealth and power of the capitalist class in the US and internationally. It requires the expropriation of the ill-gotten gains of the billionaires and the transformation of the gigantic corporations into publicly owned utilities run on the basis of social need, not private profit. This is necessarily an international struggle. Our election campaign will be conducted in the closest collaboration with our sister parties in the International Committee of the Fourth International, the World Trotskyist Movement. We base ourselves on the understanding that there is not a single problem that can be solved on a national basis. World war, dictatorship, the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the massive growth of social inequality, the escalating danger posed by climate change. These are global problems that require global solutions. The working class itself is an international class, united in the process of production, exploited by the same companies, and having the same interests. We proceed with a profound optimism, rooted in the history of the class struggle. The working class is an immensely powerful social force, but this power can only be realized through the building of a political leadership. In our election campaign, we're fighting to build this leadership in the workplaces and the factories, developing an understanding among workers and young people that there is no solution that can be found to any of the problems confronting working people except through the ending of the capitalist system and its replacement with socialism in the United States and throughout the world.